my journey into journalism is very unconventional. It actually started before I got my internship. So when I was 23, I got offered the chance to present a BBC Three documentary about being in care because I grew up in the care system. And I was initially really reluctant to do it because it just felt like I'd be really vulnerable. I'd be obviously telling my story to a whole load of people that I didn't know. But I did it, and I really enjoyed the process of asking questions, meeting people, asking things that you probably wouldn't normally ask in everyday life. Seeing that sort of resonate with an audience and inform an audience, it just felt like a really special thing for me. So that led to me deciding I want to be a journalist. And then from there, I was really fortunate. A couple of years later, I got on what's called the BBC Creative Access Scheme, and I trained up with BBC News, and I was part of the launch team for the Victoria Derbyshire programme, and I was there for a few years until 2018, and that really kicked off my start as a journalist.
And as well as being on screen, you've been a researcher, you've been a producer. What would you say are the benefits to working behind the scenes?
Yeah, a lot of benefits. So I started off as a researcher on Victoria Derbyshire's programme. The first thing I did was produce audiences. So just getting people to come on different walks of life to talk about, different issues. And the production value from that was priceless. All the stories that I researched before I ever reported on camera, the skills I cultivated, working in a team, seeing how you go from originating a story to kind of developing it to getting it on screen or to getting it on radio. All of those skills were really important for me, and knowing the different roles.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of that stuff was really important, and I would say that I'm a better reporter because I started off as a researcher.
How would you say all of those skills that you learned has actually added to your journalism and your storytelling?
Yeah, I think the fundamental thing from being a researcher and all the skills that I learned from, being behind the camera, you get a very clear sort of sense that it's never about you. It's about the story. And actually, if you love storytelling, any role is quite rewarding because you know that you're playing a part in shaping a story, and that ultimately is what it's about, whether or not you're a reporter on screen. And so when I'm reporting now, I just have that instinct to know that I just need to do everything to make sure that I bring out the best in a contributor. And it's always about that. It's always about their story, their voice, and amplifying that and kind of making it as authentic as possible.
And for you, what makes a good story?
You could have a really good news line, you could have a really good bit of information, but if you don't have the person who can really bring the humanity to the issue, it's always going to be limited in its impact. I always find that characters and voices are the most important, impactful, compelling piece of a story. And if you've got a really interesting person, you may not have a top line, you may not have a story, but you'll speak to them for long enough and you'll find something that can be reported on.
And another big part of being a journalist is that you have to be impartial. But I feel like you have reflected some of your own personal experiences in your work sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a fine balance.
Yeah.
But what do you think that adds to your journalism?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm always impartial. I'd like to think I am. I mean, of course, we all have our own personal sort of persuasions and views and everything else. But, we're here to serve the whole British public, essentially. And so you can't take a view. I think sometimes actually it's really good when you've got firsthand experience of an issue. I mean, with COVID, we're seeing a lot of communities who feel forgotten, and a lot of people are dealing with poverty. And sometimes for someone in a particular, community who's really struggling, to meet a correspondent who can say, do you know what? I've come from a background and it was really tough. And I can't imagine what you're going through, but I've got a bit of experience. Talk to me about what you're going through. That sort of heart to heart rapport can only be a good thing. So essentially, I will bring in my story, I will bring in my experience when it serves the progress of that story.
You being an on-screen reporter has also given you like other opportunities to do presenting. What's the difference between being on screen as a news reporter and presenting for something like an entertainment or factual program?
I think when you're presenting a show, a lot more of you is seen, and I think it's a bit more personality driven. I think the rules of impartiality are still there, but not as strict. Often you're expected to bring in your opinions a bit more. With that show For Love or Money, for example, we call up the scammers often, and we confront them about, them duping a well-meaning innocent person for thousands of pounds. And in that exchange, there is a high bar on entertainment as well as sort of being factual. And so you've got to kind of, you know, challenge them. You've got to ask them where's the money, and you can bring in a bit of personality and opinion and sort of indignation at what they're doing to an innocent person. You wouldn't necessarily do that in a news piece. I think that with factual, I just think it's a different culture. It lends to celebrity a bit more than news does, because often they're, getting really famous people to present these shows, which is again why another reason why I just find it absurd that I'm even doing it, because I'm co-presenting with Kim Marsh. We get on so well. She's just the loveliest lady, but she is a big star. But you know what? When all is said and done, again, it is about the story. It's about the issue. It's about the contributor. And I think you navigate those cultural and, other differences as you need to. But fundamentally, it's the same heart, which is telling a story.
I got asked recently, actually, as a young journalist, how do you make your mark in the newsroom? How do you get people to take you seriously? And I feel like this is something that you've been really good at.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, thanks.
definitely. I mean, you have really made your mark. People
Why
know
do you
who
say
you
that? Come on, let me hear it. Let me hear it.
are. Here we go. Here we go.
No, but do you really think that? I'm surprised because, like any young person, I'd imagine, I have massive imposter syndrome. I struggle. I'm insecure at times. I second guess myself. But you know what? I think my biggest, the thing I'm most proud of, I think I've really tried to be myself. And that's not always easy when you walk into a really reputable organization. It's really prestigious and well known, and you've got incredible people working around you, clever, competent, experienced people. It's easy to kind of feel like you've got to conform. And I certainly felt that for ages. I'm not because anyone kind of put that on me. I just think it's quite natural, to feel like you've got to emulate something to be accepted or to thrive and flourish. But that sort of genuine interest and passion led itself to good work. Um, and I think I've been very fortunate to have some really good editors and managers. Obviously my job in sort of journalism is my priority, but I'm also kind of given the autonomy to try out opportunities. And I think it speaks to the BBC that if you do have the resilience and the creativity, like you can really just find yourself in really exciting places. But as to how and like making a mark, I just think being yourself, believing in your stories, um, obviously learning, working hard, like I think all of that stuff is a given, but I think authenticity is really important. And it's also worth mentioning, like here I am talking about, doing a show for BBC One and doing reports and the one show. And I'm in this really, I think satisfying spot where I get to do, factual and journalism, and I get to marry the two a bit. But it's not always been like this, you have times where you do feel anonymous, like you feel like your ideas aren't really being valued. You may feel like you're being stretched, but you're not performing well because your capacity and your competencies are being tested. I think even that is a healthy space to be in, because it speaks to growth. Those moments of challenge and I suppose testing, if you want to call it that, those moments are just as valuable as, oh, I'm presenting the BBC One show. Because at the end of the day, like what we all want is longevity. We all want to have enough skill and craft and ability to withstand a long career.
In your eyes, then, how do you become a good journalist, or What is a good journalist?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I feel so honored that you'd ask me to answer these questions, because I'm like, we can't find someone better than me. I think being a good reporter, there are many things. I think a genuine interest in people. And I know other people may say this, but it's so true. Like genuine, like interest in other people and communities and the issues affecting them, how big decisions politically affect, people on the ground. I think all of that curiosity and interest is really important. I think being good with people is really important. I think accuracy and being able to fact check and being able to research a story and get the answers and get the data, and that sort of inquiring mind and analytical ability is important, because you need to be accurate. Being able to be creative with how we tell stories in this time is such an asset, and to be innovative with that. There's a lot more, but yeah, those three tips: creativity, curiosity, being good with people.